I've had quite the week in terms of traveling here and there, going 100 miles an hour, jumping straight into a full-blown negotiation first thing in the morning, where my typical morning routine, fitness modality, would include Guam, get up and move 10,000 steps, get my sun, get my sweat, engage the primal primers. For those who are uninitiated, this is the cast. This is LCC number 74. This platform that we discuss nutritional modalities, fitness modalities, and mentalities for supreme being. We hunt and gather these modalities for our audience, and we talk about them here on the cast on a weekly basis to make it more practical and accessible for everybody. What are those core tenets? How is that architecture of life to live a more fulfilled, happy, motivated, purposeful life? We call it life unifying purpose. We architect this all out, and we put it together in the format of macro programs at leftcoastcaveman.com that you can go to, LCC, go download, join the cave, and you can have our first macro program, which is arguably the most important one, primal primers. And some of them I just rattled off right there, but getting into this cast, we talk about fitness modalities, nutritional modalities, and mentalities. And so having like a full speed ahead week and engaging meetings, that's part of modern hunting and gathering, right? You have to kind of toggle between what you want to do and what you have to do in order to provide for yourself, your family, for survival and thriving, as you so eloquently put it. Well, part of that is making money, engaging in this behavior of buying and selling or creating value and exchanging that value in the world. And some of that leads to having to travel a lot, it depends on what somebody's way of life is. You know, you don't travel as much as I do, but you're just as equally pulled in this direction and that. And what I'd like to be doing all of the time is doing the primal primers and then going to sapient strength and living the Left Coast Caveman way of life 100%, but it doesn't always pan out that way. However, having the architecture of primal primers and knowing and being aware of that, and being aware of the fact of, oh, well, I can't do what I want, when I want all of the time, and when can I get it in, and get it in micro moments. So prior to this call, I try to get outside and get in the sun a little bit because I've been cooped up in it's now 12 o'clock. I've been cooped up in meetings and in front of my computer screen all day. But it begs the question for this week's fitness modality, which we've been talking about on the previous casts, this dichotomy between adding more life to your years or years to your life. And thinking about the fitness modality that we sort of introduced this week in light of that, I was thinking to myself, so when I'm at home and I'm not on the road, I'm able to just get up and move and get up and execute several primal primers right out of the gate. So first thing in the morning, whether it's between 4 and 6 a.m., it's the grounding, being more spiritually grounded, get up and move, get the 10,000 steps, sweat till you're wet, hydration, H2O, water modality, fitness modalities, executing all of that. And I'm starting to look into the idea of, is there any benefit to doing that first thing in the morning versus in the afternoon? Did it go away? Nothing?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can't hear you, sir.
Oh, I've been muted this whole time.
No, you muted yourself just maybe a few seconds ago.
Oh, really? Interesting. Okay. Well, the idea was, is there any benefit? I may not have caught any of that on but we'll roll with it either way. We'll find out because I think my microphone was muted. But talking about being on the go and not being able to execute the primal primers first thing in the morning, specifically fitness modalities. So getting up, getting your 10,000 steps, getting your Guam, getting your sweat to your wet in, some of these fitness modalities. Is there any benefit to doing that first thing in the morning as opposed to having to postpone it in the afternoon? And so opening up that inquiry, have you looked into any of that this week or thought about any of that?
Well, I mean, what I can tell you is that I'm diametrically different in terms of how I approach the primal primers in terms of timing, not essentially what I do, but timing wise, I'm usually more of a late afternoon, dusk kind of person. But I think there is more research and more alleged benefits of doing it first thing in the morning, specifically with like low light, getting your light, setting your internal clock through the phases of the sun, specifically first morning light. I know there's a great deal of benefits to calibrating, ensuring that your body is ready to go. I mean, I don't think I start looking at light, real light, not counting light you see through the window, but like light outside probably till 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, which probably isn't great. Seems to work for me, but I don't suspect there's any benefit to me waiting longer to do that. But the way I run my mornings is just a little bit different. But I would imagine, also getting your steps in, getting some movement in as well is probably better for you in terms of stimulating your digestive processes, awakening the body in general. But I don't do those things in the morning. I mean, my morning routine is probably more representative of most standard, I hate to say it, standard sapiens out there. I get up, drink some coffee, drink some water, and I log into my computer and I start going over numbers. And that's how I start my day. And I start triaging. All right. Yeah, actually, the first thing I do is I look at my calendar. First thing I do once I log in, got my water, got the coffee going on, utilize the latrine. And now I'm looking at my calendar. When's my first meeting? Okay. Planning around that, just reorienting around the calendar. Great. Next thing I do, I start looking at the numbers. How are the numbers over the last day, over the week? Okay. Any trends? Just be well versed at it. And then I start looking at emails. Okay, let's triage a few things here. What needs to be done now? What's an emergency? And then start setting up my goals for the day, what I want to accomplish, what I'm working on, what I'm continuing a task from before. And honestly, like I can't, for whatever reason, I have this mental block where I can't work out first thing in the morning. Like, and not all primal primers are workouts, though, right? I mean, getting your steps in, getting your sunlight. I think those are totally permissible in the morning. My mind's not there. I can't enjoy that. I'm going to be thinking, oh, fuck, I'm missing out. Like, this needs to be going on. If my boss calls me, I'm not logged in. I'm not you know what I mean? Like, there's just, my mind isn't free to enjoy those activities, and by the way, those primal primers are very enjoyable. When you go out for a walk, like you feel alive, feels good. Anytime you're not feeling good, go take a quick walk outside. I guarantee you'll feel minimum 30, 40% better. And that's a bare minimum. But to the original query, I think it's probably better to do it in the morning. Unfortunately, for me, I don't do it in the morning. I don't think I could be in the right mindset. But I don't think there's any wrong way to do the primal primers, be it morning or evening. But I suspect it's probably better in the morning.
Yeah, and agree 100% with your point. With regard to primal primers, it's not a matter of when, but if. And that's part of what we do here at LCC, Left Coast Caveman, is not to say this way is right and that way is wrong. And it's either this or that. Although we sometimes come to those crossroads. And the purpose of this cast is to determine, is there a crossroad there? And is there an implementation of our modalities that are more leading towards supreme being or some more towards less? And so some benefits of doing it first thing in the morning: boosts metabolism, improves mood, enhances mental clarity and focus, establishes a routine, better sleep. Just a quick query. And there's a little bit of a feared things first, I would say, modality too. It depends on the intention of the individual who's engaging in the fitness modalities that we teach at Primal Primers, Left Coast Caveman. And like you suggested, it's not just about when you get your workout in. We package it all under fitness modalities. What you're doing with your body and when. Well, not so much when, but if. But also doing something physical first thing in the morning. And it brings to mind also, and so, well, backing up to that point, like some people really struggle with this non-negotiable fitness. Some people really struggle with, okay, they go about their days such as you described, and they don't have the discipline or the intention. It's not as important to them to get the fitness modality in. So as the later part of the day comes on and, now it's dinner time. Now I got to pick up my kids. Now I got to do this. Now I got to do that. Well, then the fitness modality falls to the wayside. And I think that it's such an integral part of the system, which it's one of our core modalities, fitness modalities, that if that is your issue, then perhaps first thing in the morning is your calling. Set the alarm, or I don't use an alarm, but I'm saying, like, if you must carve out that time first thing to do it, then that might be for you. But there's also benefits to doing it in the evening time, such as increased muscle strength. Research suggests that muscle strength and coordination may be slightly higher in the late afternoon, reduced injury risk, higher anaerobic capacity. Oxygen consumption and anaerobic performance may peak later in the day, potentially leading to better performance in activities requiring short bursts of intense effort, such as your jiu-jitsu protocol. It's usually not first thing in the morning. Although I've had another guy that's let's say in our circle that tells me that jiu-jitsu is the best cup of coffee in Austin, Texas. Stress relief. That's whenever I get it in the afternoon, that's my intention. If I have a very stressful day like I do today, like, it's non-negotiable for me. Like, I know I'm doing exactly what you describe. I wake up in the morning, coffee, numbers, all of this kind of stuff flying at me, and that's filling up, and that's building cortisol. Well, some people could either go home and throw medication at that and say, oh, I'm stressed, or self-medicate through drugs and alcohol and debauchery modalities, or use that as a stress relief. And last but certainly not least, and something that's important to us through the Apex actualization and the community that we're building at Left Coast Caveman, is research suggests that it's more social opportunities working out in the evening. In the morning time, people are going about their business. They're in, they're out, their fitness modality, and then they're off to their occupation or their livelihood. Well, in the afternoon, you might have more opportunities to build some cave alliances, some supreme being alliances. You're surrounded by more like-minded people if you're doing that jiu-jitsu class in the afternoon that might want to mingle with you, talk about life, talk about what you're working on, and perhaps there's opportunities to engage in a life-unifying purpose conversation with those folks. So, cave implementation of this is yes.
Yeah, right. Whenever you can, and however it works. I mean, everyone is in charge of carving out their own schedule, carving out their own practices, and there's, essentially no wrong way to do it. Just do it whenever you can. And, for a lot of people, things add up over time, over the day, and then next thing you know, they have to sacrifice that also important physical modality or mental modality. So yeah, it might make sense to do it in the morning. Other people, as I said, I like to do mine more so in the afternoon and evening. And I think a big part of that is just like my mind presence can be so much more in tune with what I'm doing, as opposed to, if I'm lifting weights in the morning and thinking I got a meeting in an hour, and I'm just thinking about all the, doing what we all do before a meeting, going through contingencies. All right, if he says this, I'm going to say that. If he brings up this, I've got this supplemental information that I'm going to smash him with. You start go, and then next you're like, what number was I on? And you weren't even consciously contracting and being, and that's part of the joy of strength training, is being there and feeling that the musculature working, and your body adapting and suffering through. I like that. I don't want to not be there during that. I don't want to, and that's how you get hurt also. Maybe you're not bracing your core enough, and so now you're not respecting your weight. You're lifting that up, and you feel a twinge in your QL. Oh, fuck. Uh-oh. Now you got a problem, whole other problem. So I like the ability. And once again, if you can be present mind-wise in the morning doing all those things, great. I mean, anytime works. Just figure out what works best for you.
Indeed. And that is part of the Primal Primers programming and fitness modalities, is non-negotiable fitness. And of course, if you're lost in all of this terminology that we're throwing out there, go to leftcoastcaveman.com, click join the cave, download your copies. And that's part of why also I believe in the fitness modality worksheets. And I use those a lot. The Primal Primer fitness modality worksheets is because I don't have that presence of mind in the morning. I know that I have a specific amount of time that I have to execute this, because for me, I do struggle with that non-negotiable fitness as it gets into the afternoon sometimes. And to me, to have a worksheet and a guide that I just go in and execute, I don't have to think about it, and I know how long it takes, and I just go in and execute, then that helps me get through that non-negotiable fitness every single day. Sweat till you're wet. Get as many of those modalities in that you can. Now, so the implementation of something like this, the cave implementation, is obviously there's gray area, and it depends on your intention. But like I mentioned earlier, we do have some modalities that we explore, particularly in the Sapien Strength programming, which is the next phase. It's the layering on technology. It's layering on more of the left coast atmosphere of, well, there's a lot of modern technology out there, and there's a lot of choices that we have with regard to our supreme being, and what do we decide to do with our time? What do we decide to do with our nutritional protocol? What do we decide to do with our fitness? What can we determine is part of our Left Coast Caveman way of life or not? And then we do determine at some point during these conversations that perhaps there is a this way or that, an either or. And one that I've been experiencing with regard to fitness modalities, nutritional modalities, that has been a long time part of my routine that I have not quite, I think we've conversated about it, but we haven't determined what is our direction, is the Soy Boy phenomenon real? For example, I was at some kind of Whole Foods grocer type place, and I was looking.
Did we just spot one in the wild?
I was looking for protein. I was looking for protein bars, and this meal replacement bar was 20 grams of protein, which is about the amount that I'm looking for in any kind of meal part, like 20 to 30, 5 times a day. And I noticed that the one protein bar that I could find was all soy protein. And I said, nope, not going to do it. Why? Because I've not really researched it. I've not really dug into it much. But coming off of our study of the blue zones and Okinawa, Japan, and recognizing that they have a high consistency of soy in their diet or their nutritional modality, I found myself questioning this, and I found myself researching this. And before I go into what I find, what is your experience with soy?
Well, I'd say that I don't avoid it, but I don't embrace it. I don't quite see the reason why I would go for what I would dub a inferior protein if I'm looking for protein fueling. Why would I go with a plant-based as opposed to a more bioavailable, be it whey-based or collagen-based? So then you look at it from, okay, maybe not supplementation, but from a just fueling food perspective. Do I avoid soybeans? Well, yes, I do. If I can't find soybeans that are not GMO, and keep in mind that soybeans was like one of the original starter crops for the GMO movement back in, I think, the 80s. So that being said, I generally try to avoid, unless you can find a really good organic one, which I haven't been able to find. I suspect in the blue zones of Okinawa, specifically people that were growing them in their own gardens, perhaps getting a pretty good organic soybean. But I just think soybean, like so many other, monocrop industrialized crops, they've been essentially degraded by technology, mass production, and so on and so forth. So that being said, I know there are claims where it says soy can affect your testosterone and something about estrogen. I don't know how valid the veracity of those claims are, but could it be that the processing of the soy oil, the heating of it, the GMO, could that be that's leading toward these downstream effects of less optimal hormone health? Maybe. Yeah, I think so. I think it possibly could. So long story short, do I avoid soy? Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Soy boy. There's so much packed into that term. Soy milk latte. If you Google soy boy, and you're going to find, frail, pale, rainbow haired. Is there any validity to that? And I tend to side with you a little bit and think, yeah, there's some external factors, and Left Coast possibly have gone too far. That's where we find ourselves in the middle. Left Coast Caveman, middle ground. Perhaps the Left Coast has gone too far. Too much technology involved in this crop and this mass production. And it's not exactly the soy itself, but maybe the Left Coast going a little too far with regard to that crop. But just rattling off a few things and hoping that me and Sir Sylvester can determine some kind of a a cave implementation of this nutritional modality, because it does come down to nutritional modalities are very specific per the individual. And so, but we've determined in the past that there are some things that are just absolutely not part of the Left Coast Caveman way of life. And so rattling off some of those features and benefits of eating soy, let's start with heart health. Soy is rich in polyunsaturated fats, fiber, vitamins, etc. Bone health. Soy contains isoflavones, which are plant-based compounds that may maintain bone density, etc. Weight management. Soy foods are often low in saturated fat, high in protein, which can help promote satiety. Satiety. Thank you. And manage weight. Menopausal symptom relief. Some studies suggest that consuming soy products may help alleviate hot flashes and other menopausal symptoms in women due to the presence of isoflavones, which have estrogen-like effects. Cancer prevention. The isoflavones in soy have antioxidant properties and may reduce the risk of certain cancers, etc. Everything is either causing or curing cancer. But let's go on and find out, perhaps, are there some cautions for soy? Thyroid function. Soy contains compounds called goitrogens, which can interfere with thyroid hormone production in individuals with iodine deficiency or pre-existing thyroid conditions. Allergies. Okay, we know it's a common allergen. Hormonal effects. Again, soy contains phytoestrogens, which are plant-based compounds that mimic estrogen in the body. While moderate consumption is generally safe for most people, excessive intake of soy products may potentially disrupt hormone balance. Digestive issues and GMO concerns, as you've already indicated. So, I had a previous person that I worked with who was she was, because I don't want to just, because that at a glance would say to me, like, for me, that's enough for me to say, Left Coast Caveman, I'm a male, I'm a man, and I don't want to put estrogen in my body or any estrogen-like substances. And if it's mentioned in the features and the cautions, that's enough for me to say, it's not part of my nutritional modality, and nor is it one that I would promote. But for the Left Coast Cave ladies, I don't have much research, but I do know that, like, from speaking anecdotally, I had somebody that I work with that was a breast cancer survivor, and she went the holistic path for healing breast cancer, and her holistic health practitioner told her, like, absolutely, like, you can't be messing with soy, like, due to these estrogen-like compounds and the messing with the hormonal functions. And, like, look at what we just rattled off: digestive problems, hormone function imbalance, perhaps GMOs. Like, what else do you need to determine that this is a food source that, unless it's organic and maybe you're in the apex mode where you're sourcing or producing soy on your own ground in your own land, which is, I don't even know the ins and the outs of that. Like, what else do you need to determine that this product or this nutritional modality is perhaps not cave?
Yeah, and I agree with all that. I mean, that certainly is a scary list. But I would, so two things. I'm going to challenge it a little bit, because that's what we do at Left Coast Caveman, and we challenge the results, we challenge the studies. And as you know, I'm no proponent of soy, but in that research, what were they examining? Were they examining soybean oil? Were they examining monocrop soy? Or were they looking at the and I don't even know how they would organize for any of these type of studies, but are they looking at organic soybeans? Right? At the end of the day, it's a legume, it's a bean. I would challenge and say that I bet if they did a study of just looking at organic soybeans consumption, not soy oil, highly processed inflammatory oils, not the shitty soy that we find packaged in a lot of our foods, it might be a different results. But that being said, being aware of the soy that's in food, in most food, and I would guess that soybean oil is probably number one or number two in terms of the oils used in most packaged foods, probably next to canola oil, palm oil, safflower oil, all of them which are GMO, all of them which are, keep in mind, these oils, soy included, They're heated, they're degummified. They use hexanes, which are these carcinogenic chemicals to deodorize and to make them degummed and look a certain way. So it's like, well, is it the soybean or is it the industrial processing that we're using in the soy end product that's causing all these issues? I'm leaning more towards that being the issue. But I mean, why chance it, right? There's not like there's any amazing benefits of soy that just stand out and say, wow, I must have this in my life. It's not a better protein. It doesn't seem better than most of the other beans that are out there. Why consume it? I would choose not to. I would probably encourage most to not as well, just because it seems hard to find a safe version of soy. And safe as in, I'm not trying to catastrophize here, but I think as you more and more call out these questionable oils and food products, the better you're going to feel, guaranteed.
That's it right there. And I appreciate the challenge and that's what we do at Left Coast Caveman is we don't try to demonize anything. We try to accept everything, but then provide a Left Coast Caveman way of life and the cave implementation, and keeping in mind that our context is supreme being through modern hunting and gathering and making wellness practical and accessible for folks. Well, we have to provide a rubric through which they can do that. And apart from, I think what we've determined, if you would agree, the cave implementation of this would be the most soy that you find in modern hunting and gathering is not cave. And therefore, I put the protein bar back on the shelf that says soy. I put the products back on the shelf that says soy. And I have yet to find one that seems to be one that would align with an apex mode, Left Coast Caveman, supreme being through modern hunting and gathering nutritional protocol. And for that reason, I would lean more on the devil's in the details, like you're saying, and it's probably not the soy itself, but let's look at how we practically and accessibly hunt and gather soy in our modern environment. And I would say 99 times out of 100, it's not cave approved, and therefore take the decision making out of the process and just start rejecting that. And perhaps through that, like CPG companies will start to recognize that that's not what people want. People are avoiding this for a reason. And then maybe next time I go to the protein bar section, I can find something a little bit more cave approved, that kind of a macro balance that we strive for, which is high, good quality protein like you're mentioning. And that's happened in CPG, and we're noticing that. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of benefits to people eating all this soy. And we don't have the time to go into the perhaps the more conspiratorial effects of how much soy is out in the consumer packaged goods world and how many people are consuming it on a regular basis and what that might be doing to the fact that the pornography industry is lacking male actors because they can't perform anymore. That was an article that somebody led to me the other day or sent in my direction the other day. Let's not extrapolate out, but come on, man. Like, there's these hormonal disruptors are not good. And we have 9 minutes left in our meeting. And for the sake of that last 10 minutes, I would like to pivot into the mentality piece, which is our third piece, which we've been talking for some time about this idea of, all of these nutritional modalities and fitness modalities and the primal primers that we promote are not as much, I would say, and you may disagree, geared towards longevity, although that might be the impact of it. All the influenza out there seems to be pushing let's live forever. Let's live to 100. I want to live to 180. Whereas we're more towards kind of both, kind of adding more life to your years, living life in a more life unifying purpose way, and living life in a way that, like, executing these modalities provide a better quality of life for you. And so that is the purpose behind this, why this or that, and why determining like this way or that way being better. But I was thinking about it a little bit, and I was starting to question the idea of why live to 100? What would be the benefit of living to 100? And practically speaking, it's for if you if you have a purpose such as we do, this Left Coast Caveman, obviously more time to make that successful, the better. But if you don't, is there any purpose for living to 100? I mean, they tend to die in hospital more. Centurions tend to report more health issues. They have more chronic health issues in the later part of their years. So they die more often in the hospital under medical care than they do peacefully at home. That doesn't sound like a life for me. So I just think it's important to continually remind the audience that we're not a longevity platform or a life unifying purpose platform, and really making sure that every minute that you have on life, be grateful, and every minute that you have, be building something that's worthwhile for the sake of, so you start integrating these modalities into your life. You might live past the average lifespan of 75, but it's to no avail if you're not doing anything purposeful and in the apex mode with those years. And now my battery's dying. Awesome. So I'm gonna mute and allow you to speak on this for the last 7 minutes while I find a battery source so I don't lose this.
Thinking through the primal primers, absolutely, primal primers will add more life to your years and more years to your life. Guaranteed, that's going to happen if you approach it from that holistic perspective of modality, mentality, and nutrition. An after effect, and you might not even set out to live longer, but you will. You most likely will. I mean, of course, force majeure, things do happen, acts of quote unquote God, but it will happen. Like these ancient practices and not so ancient practices, they are life enriching in so many different directions and vectors. And you will find yourself, I would challenge, you would find yourself wanting to live longer. And I think that's a great litmus as well, is if you look at it from that nihilistic perspective of what's the point? Why am I here? Why would I even want to live longer? You're doing it wrong. You got to do something different. That's not healthy. You're clearly pressing the wrong buttons, pulling the wrong levers. Maybe it's too much soy. Maybe it's too much porn. I don't know. You're doing something wrong. And I think once you start reverting to these practices of primal primers, building that foundation, adding in, graduating to sapient strength, while keeping in mind the periphery, the primal primers, and then launching yourself into that ascension mode of apex actualization. I mean, you will want more years. Like now you have the problem of life short. I know it's going to end at some untimely time when I don't know when that's going to happen, but I don't want it to happen. What can I do to maybe push that out a bit? How can I squeeze out some extra years? Because I've got important work to do. People count on me. People want me here. There's things, I still have a mission. I still have people to help, whatever that might be. You're going to want more time. And I think a lot of folks, they realize they want more time at the end when, it's been a lifetime of misuse of the body, a misallocation of your talents, a misallocation of selflessness to others, to be in service of others. And you find yourself thinking, God, if only I had 3 more years, 5 more years, I'll do it differently. They have that come to God moment. And you don't have to do that. You can just do that right now where you're healthy and start planning it out. Plan out that life unifying purpose, and hopefully find yourself wanting to inject more life in your years and more years to your life.
Good, brother. Well put, and a very heavy note to end on, but that is why we do what we do. That is why we open the door to others to join the cave, to build the community, because with every minute of that apex mode, what is apex mode all about? It's you're putting your time, energy, and effort towards that life unifying purpose and towards building that thing that keeps you propelling to go forward. And that's not even to mention cave operations and all the people that are around you and your children, and expanding your family and procreating for the sake of them, taking your life unifying purpose and making it something that once you're gone, you're not gone, because your meaningful work stands. And that's something that I think, the person who came up with that quote, Blaze, I'm going to miss his name, and my notes are over here, but his name's Blaze, and then his last name is something French. He was
Pascal.
Yes,
Blaise Pascal.
Yeah, and so he was a Rene Descartes disciple, and he died at 39. But we're still talking about it. We're still using his quote. And that was in the 1600s. And so he had a very purposeful life, a life unifying purpose, and something that he sunk his teeth into that meant a lot to him. And here we are. He is eternal for that reason, and his name and his thoughts live on. And that's what each and every person, by being a creative individual, has within them. And our job here is to give you the tools and resources to realize that, to remove all of the blockages to that, so that wherever you are, whatever your occupation, whatever you're doing, if you're having to jump up in the morning and check numbers all day, every day, well, at least you're doing that with intention, and at least you're doing that with a program running in the background that understands there's a departure from that at some point in modern hunting and gathering. And your job while here on this earth is to realize that, execute that, so that way your input continues to live on. And it's a beautiful feeling, and it's a propelling feeling, and it's something that does give you energy and more life to your years.
Keep it cave.
Keep it cave. All right. See ya.